Good morning, and thank you, Chair Gore. Welcome to Yuba County. On behalf of Mayor Branscombe and the City of Marysville, and on behalf of Mayor West, Councilwoman Teeter, and the City of Wheatland, the Board of Supervisors of Yuba County, and all of our great staff that's here, just want to welcome you. Also, welcome to the unincorporated community of Linda, which is the most populous community in our county with about 22,000 residents. And it does share a zip code with Marysville, so that might be where some of the confusion came from on the address. We have multiple communities like that in the county that share zip codes, and it can definitely be confusing. So we'll move on to the next slide here. So on this map, you'll see a map of Yuba County, where we are in the state. So we're the least populated county in the SACOG region. We are not the smallest county in the SACOG region. I had to look that up because I thought we might be, but that actually, that honor falls to Sutter across the river from us. We are 650 square miles, and like our SACOG neighbor to the southeast, Placer County, we are located partially in the Sacramento Valley and partially in the Sierra Nevada. So you didn't get to see any of the beautiful county in the mountains this morning, but hopefully you'll be able to come back and see that in the future. So we share an urbanized area with Yuba City, which is in Sutter County, just across the river from us. And many of our residents travel across that river for work, shopping, school, and entertainment. So as a result, we are really one community, and the two counties share multiple bi-county agencies together. We also border Butte County to our north, Nevada and Sierra County to our east, and hard to see on the map, but we touch just a tiny bit of Plumas County in the northeast as well. So we have quite a few folks that we border. So population of Yuba County, just under 85,000 people, and over 80% of that population resides in the southwest portion of the county along the Bear and Feather Rivers. So kind of similar to Placer, I guess. A lot of their population is down in the valley floor. Ours is as well. One thing that is quite unique about Yuba County, most counties have the majority of their population existing in their incorporated cities, but Yuba County is an exception to the norm. Marysville and Wheatland are our two incorporated cities and make up less than 20% of the total population of our county, with the majority of the unincorporated areas population living in the communities of Linda, Olivehurst, and Plumas Lake, which are located south of Marysville along the Feather River and along the Highway 70 corridor. With 3 major rivers and 4 lakes and elevations that range from about 40 feet to 5,000 feet, we have plenty of rural amenities to support recreation, including hiking, camping, boating, hunting, and fishing. We also have been experiencing a lot of growth. In 2021 and 2022, we ranked as the 6th fastest growing county in California, and most of that growth is happening in the unincorporated communities of Linda and Plumas Lake. And as you know, commercial and job growth often follow residential growth, and we're starting to see jobs and commercial amenities come in to support the residential growth that's been occurring over the last couple decades. The general plan update in 2011 that the county put together included something called a valley growth boundary, and it limits development to specific areas to protect agriculture in our community. There's ample land within our valley growth boundary and the City of Wheatland to provide housing for tens of thousands of additional residents, and there are also infill and redevelopment opportunities in the City of Marysville and the older areas of Olivehurst and Linda. And we are very excited that a Costco is under construction right now in Yuba County. It's just down the street from here. Those of you who were in Marysville this morning probably had an opportunity to drive by it. That site is redevelopment in an old mall site that actually was mostly vacant since a devastating flood of 1986. So we are very excited to see redevelopment occur in that area. So a little bit about the economy of Yuba County. We're going to talk about some of the major components. So first of all, agriculture. Agriculture is a huge part of who we are here in Yuba County and is responsible for much of the open space and the rural lifestyle that we enjoy. Our biggest crops by acreage here in Yuba County are rice, walnuts, prunes, almonds, and peaches in that order. We also have grazeland and timberland. And the gross value of ag in Yuba County in 2021 was $280 million. So it's a significant portion of our economy. Something else that's very important to us is Beale Air Force Base. It's very important to the region as a whole. I know Nevada County, Placer County, Sacramento County, Sutter County, right? All the neighboring counties have residents likely who are employed at Beale Air Force Base and serve there. It's the largest employer between Sacramento and the Oregon border, and it has an annual economic impact of over $600 million to our region. So it's a kind of a little known secret in the region, but it's very important to us here. The primary mission at Beale is intelligence gathering and processing. There's many things that go on out there that we don't know about. They're not allowed to talk to us about. So, but I know there's entire buildings dedicated to watching what's going on in China and other countries, and so it's quite interesting. Also, the Space Force has a presence out at Beale Air Force Base. They operate the PAPOS radar system, which is responsible for monitoring the entire West Coast for incoming threats. And I was told by someone that works out there that they can track an item the size of a softball in space with that radar. So it's very impressive, and it's right here in our community. So I should have looked up the exact number, but I think it's about 6,000 or 7,000 employees work on base there, so it's quite significant. Sports and entertainment. So this is something that Yuba County is starting to become known for, and I believe will become known for even more in the future. So in 1998, voters in Yuba County set aside over 800 acres on Highway 65 between Olivehurst and Wheatland for sports and entertainment uses. The Hard Rock Hotel and Casino is located there in that space, as well as the Toyota Amphitheater, which serves the Sacramento region and all of the North State, and has about, can house about 20,000 people for outdoor concerts and things. So Hard Rock and the Enterprise Rancheria Tribe, which owns and operates the facility, are working on a master plan right now for the entire area between the casino and the amphitheater. And so hopefully in just the next few years, we'll start to see a lot of additional recreational and sports-related entertainment in that area. And so it'll give you all more reasons to come to Yuba County. So one other thing that's really important with respect to entertainment in Yuba County is Bishop's Pumpkin Farm. So I have imagined many of you have come. It's in Wheatland. You may be shocked to hear that last year they had over 300,000 visitors during the pumpkin season. So it's extremely significant to the city and to the county, and it's an amazing place to go. I definitely recommend do not go on the weekends during the month of October. Weekends in September are great. Weekdays are great in October, and also they're usually open the weekend after Halloween, which is a great time to go and visit as well. It's not very busy. So, and they have been growing their amenities at the farm every single year. They now have some carnival rides. They'll be adding some more this year. They make their own adult cider. Of course, they have a pumpkin patch, and they have all kinds of entertainment, and it's definitely an amazing place to bring your kids and hang out there. So, okay, next up is Yuba Water Agency, and I could do an entire presentation on this agency. Unfortunately, I only have one slide. The entire Board of Supervisors, in addition to 2 additional elected officials, sit on the board at the Yuba Water Agency, so we actually spend a lot of time doing policy and other things related to the water agency. So it was created by the voters of Yuba County and the state legislature back in 1959 to provide a reliable water supply and flood protection for the people of Yuba County. So the agency owns and operates the new Bullards Bar Reservoir, which is about the same size as Folsom, and it's located on the North Yuba River. It's the 5th tallest dam in the country, and it is the largest project of its kind in the nation owned by a local government entity. We also own and operate several hydroelectric facilities associated with the project, and together those facilities generate enough clean renewable energy for 400,000 households. So that is 13 times the amount of households that exist in the county. So it's a tremendous asset to the state and our electric grid, and it's also a tremendous asset to the county in addition to the recreation and the flood protection. Back in 2016, a 50-year contract that we had with PG&E came to an end. So prior to 2016, PG&E had received all of the power revenue and had maintained the power plants. And in exchange for that, they paid for the bonds to build the project. So at the end of the day, it didn't cost Yuba County taxpayers a single dime. It cost the ratepayers of the state of California and PG&E ratepayers. In 2016, that contract ended, and now Yuba Water Agency is 100% responsible for maintaining and operating the powerhouse, in addition to the dam and the rest of the facility, but we also receive all of the revenue from that, and it is a significant source of revenue, and we're able to reinvest it in the community. The key is we have to reinvest it in areas that align with our agency act. So there's legislation that enabled the agency, building roads is not in there, so as much as I'd like to use agency revenue to do some great transportation projects in the county, we can't, but you will hear later, I believe, about some of the projects that the agency can help support, because as long as it has a tie to something like flood protection or water supply, and we often provide the local share of regional, state, or federal grants, and so it's really helpful. It enables our local agencies to go after money that they otherwise might not be able to. Okay, so a brief history of some of the communities in Yuba County. Like many of the counties in our region, we have a rich history here, and it's very much tied to the gold rush. I'm probably already over time, but since I only had 10 minutes, so I'm gonna be pretty brief, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about the history. So first, City of Marysville. Those of you who came on the tour this morning, thank you. Thank you to Chuck Smith and city staff. It was an amazing tour. You learned way more about Marysville than I can tell you in about 15 seconds, but for those who weren't there, Marysville is our county seat, and I think the area, while it wasn't an official city, but it does date back to the 1840s, and it's named after a Donner Party survivor, Mary Murphy, who a lot of her family members were lost up in the High Sierra, but she survived. She moved to the area. She married a prominent individual in the city, and it was named after her. The city is located on the east bank of the Feather River and the north bank of the Yuba River. It is enclosed by a ring levee, which is somewhat unique, and it limits greenfield development opportunities. So the area to the south is already urbanized. It's an incorporated area, and the areas to the north and east of the city are in floodplain, and so are not developable. So that it's a prime location to do a lot of infill development and redevelopment, and it's really exciting what the city has going on there with that. There's a Chinese temple in the community, and those of you who were there this morning got to see it. It honors the water god, Bak Ai, and the legend has it that he protects Marysville from flooding, and that the city actually has not flooded since the temple in the city was built. There's also an annual parade that honors him, and the legend there is that he also prevents it from raining on the day of the parade. And it may heavily mist that day, but it has not rained, at least since I've been in Yuba County. It's I believe, the oldest parade in California, and so I would encourage you to check it out. It happens in the spring, around the end of February, kind of the beginning of March, just depends on when the Lunar New Year is. Okay. The population in Marysville is just under 13,000, and it's the third or fourth most populous community in Yuba County. So next we're going to talk briefly about the community of Linda, which is where we are right now. It is the most populous community in Yuba County, as I mentioned. It's located across the Yuba River from Marysville, so just a river separates Marysville and Linda. It's named after a steamship that used to travel from San Francisco. That traveled up to Yuba County and brought miners to the area. Unfortunately, due to hydraulic mining that occurred, which was very devastating to the entire area, steamships at some point became unable to pass and to come up here. And one of those steamships was the steamship Linda that got stranded in the area. And some of the folks that were on it decided to stay and become farmers in the area, and that's what the community was named after. So it was named after that ship, the steamship Linda. So finally, the city of Wheatland is located on the banks of the Bear River, just north of the Placer County line. It's the fifth most populous community in the county with about 3,800 residents. The city lies west of an original Army camp that dates back to 1849, that was to protect settlers and those coming out west. It also lies at the terminus of the Overland Immigrant Gap Trail, and it's where the rescue party for the Donner Party was sent out from, so which may be why Mary Murphy wound up in the area as well after she was rescued. One of the things Wheatland is really known for, besides the pumpkin patch, is in 1913, the Durst Ranch in Wheatland was the site of the hop riots. So it was the first major farm labor confrontation in California. Unfortunately, 4 deaths occurred, including a sheriff's deputy and the district attorney at the time, and so it was quite a significant event. So that's your quick introduction to Yuba County and your quick welcome. I could probably talk all day about this stuff, but there is not time for that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to Dan Peterson, who is the recently retired Public Works Director for Yuba County, and he did some absolutely amazing things in his tenure and had a great partnership with SACOG, and so I'm sure you'll be really excited to hear about all those things. So thank you again for coming up to Yuba County, and welcome.
Good morning, my name is Dan Peterson. Until recently, I was the Director of Public Works for Yuba County. I've been retired 18 days now. Thank you to Supervisor Bradford for the introduction. I'll try to keep this fairly fast, especially since Supervisor Bradford stole most of my thunder. In a nutshell, Yuba County has a vision, and we have a vision of how we're going to develop, Loomis Lake being one of the shining examples of our ongoing development. The engineers that work at Yuba County in Public Works are also very, very concerned, as are the elected officials, with our existing infrastructure in our existing cities, infill development, as Gary was just talking about. The prime areas that we're concerned about are the heavily populated areas of Linda, Olivehurst, Arboga. These are much older historic communities, legacy communities, and they were not built or designed with modern infrastructure. So as the slide behind me shows, as Supervisor Bradford mentioned, the community of Linda was established in 1850. And as a matter of fact, the original town site was immediately south of the confluence of the Yuba River and the Feather River. It only lasted 2 years before a gold mining firm bought the town and moved it so they could mine under the original location. So the original city of Linda, or development of Linda, was just kind of a organic development. In other words, people just started building homes and laid out roads, and it was back when you grabbed a 6-pack of beer and a couple of guys and you started building a house. The streets are only 18 feet wide or 20 feet wide. The setbacks are not what they are currently. There was no established storm drainage system other than roadside ditches. And the roadside ditches, quite bluntly, were there to keep the water off the road. It wasn't supposed to drain the urban area. Now you move forward to the horrible floods in '86 and in '97 that devastated Olivehurst, the area that was to become Loomis Lake. So they updated all of the levee systems. You now essentially have a bathtub where all your internal drainage sits there until it's pumped out. And the need for internal drainage became ever greater. What happens is, due to lack of internal drainage systems, we have localized flooding, and it really hits these unplanned organic developments of Linda and Olivehurst and Arboga disproportionately hard. So they are economically disadvantaged, they are historically underserved, and they were never designed with modern infrastructure. So this just describes a little bit more about the communities. Once State Route 70 was built, it essentially split Linda in two. So you have the community of West Linda, which is pretty much isolated, and then the community of Linda, or some people call it East Linda, where development has continued to occur. It's where Yuba College is, where Walmart is, where Costco is now going, where we are now currently sitting. Unfortunately, the demographics are rather, I'd say, varied. The farther north and west you are, the lower the median household income. West Linda, if I recall it correctly, the median household income is somewhere around $31,000 a year. It pretty much falls all within 2 census tracts, and they're the same. East Linda actually has 4 census tracts. The farther east you go, the higher the median household income, but the areas closest to State Route 70 still have very low median household incomes in the range of $29,000 to $40,000 per year. And again, a lot of these areas still lack the modern infrastructure, especially the storm drain, sidewalks, bicycle lanes. The further south you go, the better off we are, but Olivehurst, unfortunately, the farther south you go, the soil changes. I'm a hydraulics engineer first and foremost. Linda has a lot of sand because this is where the riverbed used to be. Olivehurst is high clay content, which means it does not drain. When water falls there, it stays there until it's pumped out.
Hey Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but for those who like maps, I just found it very helpful. In front of you on your desk, you have a printout that says "Welcome to Sutter." Visit Sutter. You have a map behind there. As Dan's talking, you can just see the
Awesome.
community.
Thank you.
James, there's also a place map, and I don't know if you have it, but on the place map too, we have the.
The place, got it. Yeah, thank you.
So in terms of opportunity, it's kind of a running joke. I think I was the oldest person working at Yuba County until I retired. But I'm the unofficial grandfather of all of the school children in Yuba County. And between my wife and I, we have 7 kids, 7 grandkids. I took great offense, as did all of my engineers, that we were seeing school children during inclement weather walking down the middle of the street because the roadside ditches were full of water. And there was no place else to go. As I mentioned earlier, there were no sidewalks. There were no bicycle facilities. There were no storm drains. You had an 18 to 20 foot wide street with a deep ditch on either side. And those ditches filled up with water, and you now have children walking to school in a rainstorm with the travel way, in other words, in with the motorized vehicle traffic. Extremely horrible conditions. So we really aggressively started going after funding, trying to identify funding sources to go rehabilitate these roadway sections. Huge opportunity for Yuba County. And it just so happened that we had a confluence of fortunate events. Number one, the Yuba Water Agency, as Supervisor Bradford mentioned. The Yuba Water Agency's, I can't remember the correct word for it, but the legislative bill that established Yuba Water Agency assigned it what it could use as funds in order to accomplish. And one of those funds is protection against flood. The other is internal drainage. For those of you that aren't engineers and geeks like I am, roughly 30% of a rehabilitation project for a roadway is drainage. So up to 30% of our projects can be funded legally by the Yuba Water Agency should they choose to do so. They have been a gracious partner and have covered our local cost share when we go after grants. A number of communities don't have that luxury, unfortunately, in California. So we are extremely fortunate to be a disadvantaged community that has its local cost share. Initially, we did not have opportunities to go after big, comprehensive, transformative projects. So the engineers and I got together with Public Works, with the public officials, and we decided on a strategy that we were going to start working adjacent to the existing schools, doing small projects as funding became available, and then radiating outwards so that the children could get to school safely and we could actually start developing a first-time active transportation grid and connecting residential communities to the transit facilities, which currently they didn't actually have a safe access to even get to the transit facilities. Our initial grants were through the ATP program. They went from maybe $1.5 million to $3.5 million, which at that time could maybe do 1 to 3 road segments, maybe 1.5 miles to 2 miles at a time. But those were not large transformative projects. But we did this for a number of years, and we bit off quite a bit of the communities that needed retrofitting. Then we had a change in the philosophy with the California Transportation Commission. The CTC recognized that these smaller projects, these smaller ATP awards, were not creating the results they were looking for. They really wanted to see an increase in bicycling and walking, see a transformative change in the communities, and it wasn't happening when you could only do 1 to 3 road segments at a time. So with the Cycle 10 ATP project, the CTC shifted towards wanting larger transformative projects. And this is where I have to give a shout out to the SACOG staff, and Victoria's sitting over there. She has been a great advocate and assistance to me. It was the SACOG staff that first said, Dan, you need to go after larger projects. And they assisted me in developing the scope for the biggest, most ambitious ATP project that Yuba County has ever gone after. So we went after the West Linda Comprehensive ATP project. It is, in total, a little over $30 million. I think about $22 million of it was funded by the state. We were successful in getting the grant. It will pretty much equip half of the community of West Linda with its first ever storm drain system, sidewalks, Class 1 bicycle lanes where our available right-of-way exists without having to move homes, and Class 2 bicycle routes where our right-of-way allowed or didn't allow the Class 1s. So this is huge for us. Oh, actually, I got it wrong. It's $26 million state grant and then a $5 million local match from the Yuba Water Agency. So this segues or leverages off of our initial smaller projects that we had done near Cedar Lane School, on Garden Avenue, and then on Feather River Boulevard. So this project is currently in design, the one I just talked about, the West Linda Comprehensive Project. We are talking about 4 miles of Class 1 bike lanes. You're talking about 7 miles, actually it's over 7 miles of new sidewalks, and about 7 miles of the first ever storm drain system. Because as we eliminated the roadside ditch to put in the sidewalks, you have to have the storm drain to convey the water. So this is huge. And then for the ATP grant where we weren't successful on the state side, SACOG was once again a huge partner in helping us continue our vision of going after these smaller grants in our urbanized areas. And this slide represents a number of these different projects that were funded because of SACOG. So once again, I cannot express how much this means to Yuba County and to the entire Public Works Department, because we live here. You know, these are our kids and grandkids that are going to these schools. So yeah, this is very, very personal to us. But you can see 7th Avenue, Cedar Lane, Garden Avenue, Feather River Boulevard, Fleming Way, Northfield Road, complete streets, Linda Avenue, and then we're also doing the electric charging station project, just for fun. Right? So, just summarizing, these are some of the urban capital projects that were funded by the state. We're looking at $26 million so far funded by the state. Regional collaboration, once again, not to beat a dead horse, but we have a huge advantage over many of the other smaller, economically disadvantaged communities because we have the Yuba Water Agency to cover our local cost share. And I can tell you, now that I'm retired and I'm actually running a consulting firm, that there are a number of other small, economically disadvantaged communities that cannot go after very many grants because they lack the local cost share. That's a huge, huge issue for a number of smaller communities. And at this point, I would like to call up a couple of our partners from Blue Zone, Marnie and Eric. I believe there's actually a lessons learned as they're walking up here component to this, and one of the lessons learned for an old cranky engineer like me is you can't just design something on your own. The stakeholder involvement is critical, and the support we get is critical, and Blue Zones has definitely been one of our huge supporting partners.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marnie Sanders, and I'm the Executive Director of Blue Zones Project, Yuba Sutter. And it is such a pleasure to be here, and I met some of you or saw some of you this morning as we toured Marysville, and I have to say that's our kind of style meeting because we were moving, and as I'll get into Blue Zones a little bit, you'll understand why I said that. But I too want to acknowledge SACOG and the work that you've done alongside Yuba County. And it's really magnificent to see the transformation that's already happening that really aligns well with the policy work that we are working on at Blue Zones, and we'll go into more detail about. And thank you, Dan, retired Dan, and then of course the City of Marysville and the folks that we work with alongside every day in our work. Just very appreciative of that. And this is the most difficult thing for me ever. Okay, I actually went the right way. All right, I know some of you probably met Eric at a previous SACOG meeting, but has everybody heard of Blue Zones in the room?
No.
Yeah, assume they haven't.
Assume they haven't. All right. Well, I do want to throw out a little teaser before I get into our short presentation. So Dan Buettner, the founder of Blue Zones, you'll be able to see him in a series on Netflix that's going to air on August 31st. So it's a 4-part series. We're really excited about it at Blue Zones. It's very hush-hush. We don't really know what it's all about, but there is going to be a 6th Blue Zone announced. And so we're really looking forward to that. In any case, so about 20 years ago, Dan Buettner, who is a author, a best-selling author, he has many books. I know I talked to some of you, have read some of his books, and National Geographic writer, and it's actually this article that was in the National Geographic magazine that really caught the attention of folks about Blue Zones. So Dan just got really curious about health and longevity and really, you know, how to live longer, and started to study areas around the world where people were living longer, and not just longer, but healthier and happier as well. And so he and a number of researchers traveled around the globe, and they found 5 areas, all the way from Okinawa, Japan, to right here in California in Loma Linda. And what they discovered is people there are 3 times more likely to live to be 100 years or more, and they live 12 more good years than we do here in North America. And they really started to dig in and study why that was, what was going on in these areas that lent itself to health and longevity and happiness. And from that came the Power 9. So these are the healthy habits, those 9 common healthy habits that were found in the original Blue Zones areas. And so I'll touch on them briefly. I know we don't have a ton of time, but just so you get an idea of what they are about. So moving naturally, we did that today. A lot of the Blue Zones, original Blue Zones, people, it's just natural. It's part of their environment. They're just nudged to move. They don't use mechanical devices to get anywhere. It's just part of their environment. And so think about that in the context of the environments that we're creating here around walkability and bikeability. So really, really critical to overall health and happiness and longevity. A deep sense of purpose. You know, who wakes up in the morning and just can't wait to get out of bed and go tackle whatever job or thing that they're involved in? That means if you are excited, that means you're living within your purpose and having that deeper sense of meaning in your life. It can add up to 7 years to your life. Downshifting, I don't know, there's not a lot of people who get the downshift part in our society, but folks in these areas around the world, they'll take a nap in the middle of the day, you know, take time for prayer or meditation, just taking a break out of the day. 80% rule, or Okinawans' mantra is Hara Hachibu, which means only eat to your 80% full. Another Power 9 principle that I could use to probably work on a little bit, especially with our portion sizes here in North America. Plant Slant pretty much says it all, but folks in these 5 regions tend to eat a lot more plant-based diet, a lot less meat. Friends at 5, positive pack, loved ones first, sense of belonging. That's all about that human connection, and it's so critical to overall health and well-being for folks. And then this idea of life radius, and I think too this is where we can tie into building environments where we're just naturally nudged to be healthier. So at Blue Zones, we define a life radius as this 10-mile circumference where we spend 90% of our time. So if that life radius is set up where it does not support you moving naturally, it doesn't support your overall health and well-being, it's going to be harder to be healthy. But if we're creating an environment where it's easy to be healthy, the healthy choice becomes the easy choice. It often becomes the more unavoidable choice. So if we're building communities where it's easy to hop on your bike and bike to work or walk to work, people are going to do that. But if they see barriers to that, they're going to hop in their car. So I am so pleased by the conversations that are being had and the development that's already going on to address that. The sidewalks for the kids, we want to see kids being able to get to school safely. We do a lot of walking school bus programs with our schools, and sometimes it's hard to find a safe route to walk the kids to school. And we at Blue Zones really want to walk alongside all of you and help to facilitate some of these really systemic changes in our community. And just really briefly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eric. These are the 3 areas that we focused on, and of course I've touched on built environment, but people, places, and policy. So we're out in the community engaging with individuals. We're talking about sense of purpose and meaning. We're hosting purpose workshops. We're doing cooking demonstrations. We're doing walking moai. Moai is a Japanese Okinawan term for coming together for a common purpose. And actually, Supervisor Bradford, there he is, he's leading a walking moai in his district, and Dan Flores, he leads a walking moai in Marysville, so we're very grateful to them for doing that. But it's really about educating people to get out and walk. And we also want to show people that our community does have areas where we can walk and we can get out and bike. And so that's some of the work there. And then we're in our work sites, our schools, and other organizations, really helping to enhance health and well-being at those organizations. And what we've found is a lot of the places that we're working with, they already have some pretty great programs around health and well-being, but we're really just helping employees to use those options and just really, again, to create that sense of health and well-being and start getting people to think about their overall health. And then lastly, and I'm going to turn it over to Eric here, we work in the area of policy, and this is really, I think, the meat, or should I say the beans of the project, in that this is where the real transformation is going to take place, and the work that we do with all of you here today as well. And so we not only work in the area of built environment, but we also work in tobacco policy and food policy. So obviously we'd love to see a smoke-free community, and so we're working, Eric in particular is working with all of our jurisdictions on that. And then with food policy, so closing that gap for accessibility to healthy food options. And if we talked, Gary talked earlier about the rich agricultural community that we live in. We want to make those connections between our local farmers and our local eaters, our local farmers and our local schools. And it's just been a real pleasure to work with Blue Zones. I think our community is so blessed to have the Blue Zones project here. We would not be here if it were not for our sponsors, Adventist Health and Right Out. And so we're so grateful for that. And there's probably some communities out there that are already having conversations about Blue Zones projects in their communities. And if you're interested in more conversations, or if you're interested in how to bring a project to your community, we can certainly have that conversation too. But I'm going to turn it over to Eric now, who is going to go in a little more detail about the work that we specifically do within built environment.
Marty, can I just specify the geography?
My name is Eric Paredes, and I currently have the privilege of being the public policy advocate here with the Blue Zones Project Yuba Sutter team. So, Marnie touched a little bit about our policy work, but I want to specifically talk a little bit more about built environment. So, as Marnie mentioned, in the 5 original Blue Zones, people lived healthier, happier lives, and it wasn't because they were out there hitting the gym, right? It's because their environments were just designed that way. Their streets were and sidewalks, it was accessible to people. It was easy to bike. It was safe to bike. So it's a huge change that we try to do here in Yuba and Sutter counties. And through built environment change, individuals can see tangible transformation taking place in their lives, from the downtowns, the parks that they gather in, to the streets that they use to navigate to get to work, grocery stores, all that good stuff. So we are just super blessed to have amazing partners at the city and county level. So all of the representatives that you see here from Yuba and Sutter counties, they work very closely with us, and we are so lucky that they have embraced Blue Zones. They see us as an important partner in this work, and it just makes the work so much more enjoyable and also easier, because we're all very closely aligned. So we have a built environment committee. So just want to mention that we do have a community blueprint that was developed with input from the community. And with that, we have goals under food policy, tobacco policy, and built environment. And our built environment sector committee is the committee that really drives that work. So we, again, we're so lucky to have representation from all of the 4 jurisdictions that Blue Zones is currently in both Yuba and Sutter counties. So just want to, shout that out. So Vincenzo Coraza, who is a public works director with the city of Marysville. We have Dan Flores as well, who's an economic development director with the city of Marysville, but also serves as a county supervisor in Sutter County. Diana Langley, who's a city manager with the city of Yuba City. Mike Lee, who is the Community Development and Services Agency Director in Yuba County. Neil Hay, who's the Development Services Director in Sutter County. And then we have other individuals. Ben Deal, who is a bike advocate in Marysville, also serves on the Planning Commission with the city of Marysville. And then Bill Evans, who's a bike advocate on the Yuba Sutter side. So it's really awesome just to have individuals that have so much knowledge of development, and then of course our bike advocates who regularly get on their bike. They have bike groups, and they're able to really just identify those areas where there's changes that need to be made. So we meet very often. Sometimes we have little emergency meetings where we're like, hey, we got to talk about something. Oh, a grant opportunity came up. Should we go after it? So we're just, it's a very engaged group. So, the ways that we work and support the cities and counties is really through technical assistance, supporting grant efforts, stakeholder involvement, and public outreach. So, with this, as you can see in the photos here on your left-hand side, that is actually a walk audit. So an opportunity presented itself. There was a complete street safety assessment. UC Berkeley Safe Trek got money to really just identify jurisdictions to go out and do walk audits for complete streets. So we, applied as a regional joint effort, and we got it. So we were paired with FAIR and peers, and they came out. We identified different areas throughout both counties, walked them. So hopefully later this month we'll be receiving a full report, where they'll provide a lot of awesome recommendations of how to make our streets and sidewalks safer. And then on the top right, you can see there, that's part of our complete street safety assessment. And then the bottom here, you can see that's at the board meeting that I attended. And I'm gonna provide an example in the next slide of that regional collaboration, but I do have something that I wanted to share. So this is a printout of what we are calling the spine. So, this area is very flat, so there's a lot of opportunities for really biking. But what we've identified is that there's a lot of gaps in our regional bike network. We have a really, really cool bike path from the Sutter Buttes, and it kind of just ends in West Yuba City. And there's going to be a connection to the new park that's actually going to the ribbon cutting is happening, the Deedar Baines Park. So it'll be connected there, and then it kind of just stops. So our Built Environment Committee identified, there's a lot of potential to really just increase bikeability in this area. So We brought on a consultant from Alta Planning. He read a lot of our plans. We did a bike tour, and then sort of the spine was developed. So the goal here is to connect the Sutter Buttes out to Yuba College, which is just down the street. So just working with our jurisdiction on that. I will leave this somewhere here, and just really excited. That's one of the ways that we work together, and seek grant funding and figure out opportunities to really just improve our communities. And then I just want to talk about one grant in particular that's really important to all of us here in this community, and that is the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So, Blue Zones project, in collaboration with our different jurisdictions, we really just convened people here. So Steve Krager, who I know some of you know, former city manager of the city of Yuba City, previous executive director of Blue Zones project, Yuba Sutter. When this opportunity came up, he actually reached out to the different jurisdictions and said, hey, who's applying for this? And he identified that I believe there were 2 different jurisdictions that were seeking this grant. So he just, brought everyone together with this approach of the regional approach. So we had, really support from all of our jurisdictions. So City of Marysville, City of Wheatland, Yuba County, City of Yuba City, City of Live Oak, my hometown, and then Sutter County. So there was a regional joint application, and this past February we were granted. We received the news that we got granted these funds. So right now, really just where we're at is I know the county, Yuba County was the lead agency, the lead applicant, but I know that right now they're in the process of bringing in a consultant, and there is a commitment from Blue Zones to really do the public input, really engage communities, because it's also important that as we're making changes to our community, that it needs to happen in an equitable way, and that means engaging people in communities that this is going to happen in. So hopefully we'll have a really awesome action plan, and we'll see more development. So with that, I believe I'm passing it back to Dan. So, but happy to answer any questions. We'll be hanging out, and we'll leave this the spine somewhere here. Thank you. So there was some printing errors, so please excuse that, but we'll make sure that when the bike path is implemented, it's perfect. So thank you.
Well, now that you've heard all about the wonderful things that we've already done, the question now is, what are we doing next? And even though I'm retired, I'm hoping I'll get to be a part of it. There's a couple of major things that we would like to do as Yuba County. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, our huge West Linda Comprehensive ATP project only hit half the streets in West Linda. So I've still got half a city to go. And then we have the community of Olivehurst right after that. We actually just submitted a grant application, the biggest, even bigger than West Linda, for $38 million under the local community climate adaptation program. So it's virtually the same type of a project. The existing drainage system is unable to convey the current runoff, let alone the anticipated runoff due to climate change. So that necessitates putting in a storm drain system, and by golly, while we're at it, I'm going to put in sidewalks and bike lanes. So that is one of the big future projects we're doing. Also, we're doing a number of commercial roadway projects as well, such as Lyndhurst Avenue, which runs right in front of this building. Northfield Road, which we mentioned, we've done 2 phases on, we're working on the 3rd. And then we've already done Olivehurst Avenue in Olivehurst, but we have a little bit of remaining work to do in terms of the drainage for that. And as I just mentioned, Olivehurst, we just submitted the local transportation climate adaptation program. That will be the biggest project we'll have ever done if we're successful in getting that grant. But that still only covers 1/3 of Olivehurst. So we have decades of work left to do in order to completely retrofit and modernize the infrastructure in these legacy disadvantaged communities. So the next slide is lessons learned. It should be you really can teach an old dog new tricks, because if you can teach me, you can teach anybody. One of the nice things about retiring is I get to turn over the reins to some much younger, smarter, ambitious staff that share the same vision and goals as I did. And now it's their kids walking to school and they're taking care of the roads. But we learned that there's a number of things to be successful. Number one is we need to strategically choose our grant applications and how we go about it. One thing that I was guilty of doing when I was a young man and had hair is I would take a square project and try to force it in a round grant hole. Does not work well. What we have now is a different philosophy of we have a vision of what we want to accomplish, and as grant opportunities come out, we now assemble a project that fits the mission, goals, and objectives of the grant program. We're accomplishing what we want to, but we're doing it in a uniquely phased manner where we take advantage of the grant opportunities as they become available, and we take those portions of our vision that fit that grant program and go after the grants that way. Instead of saying, by golly, we're going to do Peterson Boulevard and we're going to do this project, and now we're just going to force it into a grant application. The second thing that we do is have open lines of communication. Once again, I mentioned this earlier, it's not really a joke. As a young engineer, I thought that being technically proficient was the means of being successful. The older I got, the more I learned that networking and being part of a team is core, is critical to a successful program. So that is something that the folks at SACOG have helped me learn. Once again, I'm looking at Victoria, who's been a huge help over the years. Blue Zones, the city of Marysville, the city of Yuba City, the county of Sutter, we've all been partners together. And there's a number of other partners out there, local community groups that have been immensely helpful in scoping our projects and helping us think outside the box of what a traditional engineer would think in terms of asphalt. Finally, when you're doing public outreach, when you're scoping a project, you have to recognize who the stakeholders are, and you have to frame your project, your presentations to the audience. So I cannot go out there and start talking about easels, which has nothing to do with painting, by the way. It actually has to do with road design, to most people. They don't care, they don't understand. But what I can do is paint the picture of, here's a photo of my kids or my grandkids walking down the middle of the street in a rainstorm. That message gets across. And then letting people know that there really are opportunities. These communities have been there for 150, 160 years, and a lot of them think there is no opportunity to go through and retrofit and bring us into the modern era. By golly, there are opportunities out there, and it's up to us to demonstrate to these folks that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And then finally, the emphasis once again on stakeholder outreach and input. When I started designing these projects, I'll admit, I did not do a very good job. My idea was I want to put in a storm drain system, I want to rebuild my roadway, and maybe I'll throw in a couple of sidewalks. And it took the planners a year or two or three to finally beat it into my head that no, Dan, there's a whole world out there on active transportation planning and design. And we have slowly improved our projects and how they're designed and how they're scoped so that it better fits all of our stakeholders and all of our stakeholder needs. So once again, a special thank to the SACOG staff. There's a number of folks with whom I have worked on the SACOG staff over the years that once again have been immensely helpful in educating me on how to put together projects, how to strategically frame projects, and quite bluntly, how to design a good ATP project. So thank you so much for the staff and for the board that supports them.